It's my feel-good breakfast show.
With COVID-19 infections increasing every single day and the peak approaching, so too does the urgency to find and develop an effective vaccine. So recently, the first vaccine clinical trial on the African continent was started here in South Africa, led by the Professor of Vaccinology at Wits University, Shabir Mahdi. Now, the Professor joins us to tell us a little bit more. A very good morning, Prof. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Absolute
it's good
pleasure.
To have you. It's so good to have you. Professor Mahdi, how is this clinical trial going?
Well, it has started off reasonably well. I think the reception that we had from the community when we started to make it known that we were about to embark on the study was quite phenomenal. As an example, in the first 3 days of us doing what we call a pre-screen, and that is just for people to come forward that were interested in participating, we had close on to 800 people that arrived at our doorstep. So we literally needed to ask people not to come any longer because our facility was being overcrowded. So it certainly has had a lot of interest on the part of the communities where we operate. And now the difficult work really starts, and that is to actually get people to start being enrolled into the study, to make sure that we're not causing any harm. I think following up on the safety of the vaccine is of utmost importance. And unfortunately, the only way that we can do that is by getting volunteers to participate in the study. And then beyond that is really to determine whether the vaccine actually protects against COVID-19. And as you pointed out, the reality that we face right now is that we're heading to a situation where we're probably going to continue having waves of outbreaks, at least for the next 2 years, unless we can get a vaccine sooner.
What will specifically be the aim of this vaccine, and how are you anticipating or hoping that it'll work?
So the way this vaccine is constructed, there's a number of different technologies that are currently being used to develop a vaccine. In fact, this is one of close to 150 vaccines that are either being developed or that have already been developed. There's of those 150 vaccines, there's about 11 vaccines that have gone into clinical trials. The vaccine that we're evaluating is the one that is furthest down the line in terms of clinical development. So when we evaluate vaccines, we go through various stages of clinical evaluation, starting with a few less than 100 participants in what we call phase 1 studies, which allows us in terms of determining whether the body mounts a good immune response to the vaccine, as well as provide an early readout with regard to safety concerns. And then we scale up to phase 2 studies. And what we're doing in South Africa is sort of the equivalent of a late phase 2 study, which allows us to be able to assess both the safety of the vaccine as well as what is especially of interest to us, and that is whether the vaccine actually protects against COVID-19. Now, like I mentioned, there's a number of different technologies. Of all of the vaccine studies that are currently being done, this is the only vaccine study that's being done in Africa, and in fact, there's one other study that's currently being done in Brazil, which are sort of middle-income countries. For the rest of the vaccine studies that are being done, they're all being done in high-income countries. And I think it's important to emphasize that because there's a false perception that Africans are being used as guinea pigs. And they can't be anything further from the truth. Because right now, there's a huge amount of competition across the world by scientists to be involved in these vaccine studies. And unlike a vaccine for TB, malaria, or HIV, where there's very limited opportunity to do those sort of studies in high-income countries, the reality when it comes to COVID-19, as we've seen it transpire over the past few months, is that there's almost no country in the world that has been spared the effect of COVID-19. So it's not to say that companies are desperate to come to Africa to try out these vaccines. That is really a misperception. In fact, if anything, we're struggling to get companies interested to do these studies in countries such as South Africa.
But Prof, you're collaborating with the University of Oxford in the UK on this trial. Please tell us about how this collaboration came about and what exactly it entails.
So this vaccine that we're evaluating is known as a non-replicating adenovirus vaccine. Which basically means that it uses a virus that doesn't really cause disease in humans. That virus is sort of genetically engineered, so it can't actually replicate even after it is injected into a person. So the study in South Africa is being led by South Africans. There's academic input from the co-investigate collaborators in the United Kingdom, and they've fortunately provided us with a vaccine to actually evaluate.
You know, Professor, this is starting to sound like a brilliant script for a movie, and I think you would have to take one of the lead roles in it. And if we had to play it forward to its crescendo, its big finale, obviously it would mean that the vaccine is successful, which we certainly hope it is. When, if you are successful, when do you think it would be ready to be made public?
Initially, we were expecting only to be able to get a readout as to whether this vaccine was going to protect against illness or not by the middle of next year. But on the current trajectory, in terms of the speed at which people are getting infected in South Africa, we probably will get the readout as early as November of this year.
Wow.
So once the vaccine, like I said, right now, in terms of what we expect, as well as the United Kingdom, both of us expect to be able to get an answer as to whether this vaccine works by the end of this year into 2 separate studies. And there's a third study that's taking place in Brazil, which very likely, because of the huge outbreak they're having in Brazil as well, will also provide us an answer as to whether this vaccine works. So we'll probably have information from 3 different studies, separate studies, which shows whether the vaccine works in different populations. The next major challenge is to actually have sufficient ability to manufacture the vaccine at scale. Because this is a vaccine that we're going to need not 1 million doses or a few million doses, we're going to need billions of doses.
Yeah.
So that sort of process is currently underway.
Sure.
Wow. Professor, we're in awe of the work that you do, and we are wishing it, willing it with every ounce of our being that you are successful. So all the best of luck to you and your team.
Thank you for having me.
And that was Professor Shabir Madhi of the University of Wits University. He is, of course, the Professor of Vaccinology over there. And, of course, as mentioned before, finding an effective vaccine is a global priority. And the work being done by the likes of Professor Madhi and his team at Wits is certainly a testament to South Africa's scientific capabilities. We wish them all the best.